Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the UNSECURITY podcast. This is episode 102. The date is October 20th, 2020, and I'm Evan Francine, your host. Unfortunately, Brad Nye, my good friend and regular co-host, is out with a sinus infection, I think. I don't know if he's been to the doctor to confirm that diagnosis, but he's not here today. So it's me flying solo, but not really. I'm very, very excited to introduce you to a great guy and a tremendous asset to our information security community, Neal O'Farrell. Hi, Neal.
Hey Evan, how are you? Thanks for inviting me back for yet another one of these conversations.
Oh man, it's the last couple of conversations we've had have been so rewarding for me. So it's a great honor to have you here. I'm
You're
excited to
welcome.
talk. Awesome. So thanks for joining the podcast. I'd like to start off. Some people, obviously don't know security people. We're not, famous. So Neal, tell us a little bit about kind of your journey, in information security. Tell me about your background.
Yeah, I started in information security the same way as everyone else did. I went to marketing college to study branding so I could be a dressmaker. So there's nothing unusual or different in my past, but it's true. I mean, that's not a lie. I was studying. I wanted to be a fashion designer. I was going to be the third generation to take over a famous Irish fashion business, a 100-year-old business that had some really famous clients: Coco Chanel, Yves Saint Laurent, the Queen of Siam, Nancy Reagan. But more than that, I was going to inherit this little estate. So there's a 400-year-old estate. There was a farm, there were gardens, there were servants, there was a gardener called Mr. Peacock, and I was going to inherit this because none of the other siblings had any interest in this. And I only realized later how much I wanted it because it was mental illness. It wasn't just that I was a creative type, but I had a particular type of mental illness that uh, it's a form of social anxiety, and it comes with something called avoidant personality. So it wasn't just that I had an avoidant personality, but I avoided personality. So I went in. So I went into college with this whole dream in mind that I would live in this magical kingdom, and I wouldn't have to deal with people, and I wouldn't have to have a proper job, and I wouldn't have to have bosses and co-workers. I would be automatically the boss. That didn't work out because for some reason, you Americans thought that polyester and nylon were so superior to finely woven Irish tweed. So first year in college, some guy, 1980, so 40 years, some guy showed me how if you put a floppy disk inside a computer with a little bit of code in it, you can steal passwords. And my thought was not, um, wow, I could be a great spy, but I thought if these computer things ever take off, someone's going to have to protect the world against people like him. So that's where the seed was planted. I felt there was nothing much happening in computer security in Ireland in the 1980s. So I ended up in encryption, military encryption, ComSec. Won a couple of big contracts with the Irish banks. I encrypted the entire national ATM network when I was 27, 28, which is young for an Irishman. And ended up going head to head with the NSA. We took on their Stu3 secure phone. They didn't like what we did. It was right at the birth of the crypto war. So you think Phil Zimmerman, had his knuckles broken? Yeah, 2 years before that, we had bomb threats. We had I remember that. So I'm working on a book where one of the last days of my encryption started when I walk into the office, and the receptionist says, "What the f is wrong with your knees?" And I look down and there's wet patches on my knees. And my routine every morning was to get on my knees and look under my car for a car bomb, because it was Ireland in the 80s and 90s. Terrorism was very, very commonplace. Car bombs were not unusual, but we were getting threats, we assumed, from the Americans about stop making unbreakable crypto. So I worked with GCHQ for a while after that. They apologized. Long story there. But when I moved to the States in 2020, now 20 years ago, I decided to go to the calm side of security. So I was appointed director of education for a small security startup in San Francisco called Zone Alarm. And Zone Alarm were very quickly acquired by Checkpoint. And that got me into the human side of security. I've kind of been stuck there ever since. Consumer security. 20 years ago, I was building employee security awareness courses. I was writing about what I call the human perimeter for search security. Remember that part of Tech Target back in 2000, 2001. Built a bunch of security awareness courses, and then it's just been really people ever since then. And it really, I think, helped calm me down because, when you're working with military and government and banks in the intelligence community, it's ugly. It's just, and encryption too is cold. There's nothing human about it. So that was probably the first time I actually treated myself, in a sense, had my mental illnesses treated, because I just switched. I love this word, palingenesis, rebirth. I just reinvented myself. I'm not a crypto guy anymore. I'm not a spook and spy guy. I'm a people security guy. So there's I could go on, but I'm not going to. I can see
No,
your eyelids are beginning to droop there.
no, not at all, man. This is fascinating. I think people's uh, people's backgrounds are just amazing to me. The people in our industry, the fact that I'm not one of those who likes polyester, man. So I'd go with Irish tweed.
You
So if
should
you would have
practice
gone that
that.
route, I would have bought your stuff.
Well, you would have. Well, yeah. I mean, you in a tweed dress and blouse. Okay. Yeah,
Hey, it's
that's a.
2020, man. I mean, what
It is.
everything goes.
It is. Call it a kilt and move on. So.
Exactly. No, I think it's because a lot of us, I think, you and I have talked before, and we're both kind of old timers, right? I mean, we've been in this industry for a long time. It's crazy how when you started off with your background and you're like, well, it's like everybody else. It's like that was, and I don't know how many listeners caught on to that, but there is no like everyone else, right? We all come into this industry in such weird ways.
Yeah.
I have a degree in geology. I mean, rocks. What the hell is
Wow.
that? What am I going to do with that?
To get your money back?
No, it was a public school. They're not giving me my money back. It's
Wow.
University of Minnesota.
All right. Well, you are the product of your mistakes. So just.
I am the product of my mistakes. That's very true. And then, but I started on the tech side too. I was a network guy, very deep into networking and how networks worked, how communicate, how computers communicate with each other. I stole, you know, it, the statute of limitations has run out, but I stole my copy of Windows 95 off a Microsoft bulletin board server, just so I could brag that I was the first one who had it.
Right.
Um, but then you come to this realization that to me, information security isn't about information or security as much as it is about people.
Absolutely.
You know,
We're in the
when we
people
get things
business.
wrong, people suffer. Right. And so I'm just fascinated by the fact that here we are, you come at it, you come from this way. And I mean, we need to talk more, man. I'd love to hear more stories about what it was like in Ireland in those days. I can't imagine ever getting on my knees looking under my car for a bomb. That's
It was.
crazy.
I used to get phone calls, and it started off just silent, and then they went to, "You should look under your car," and I thought it was my friends. I mean, we already knew. So we were working in encryption. We had been told. So we had been told by the Irish military intelligence that what we're, because Ireland wasn't a signatory to COCOM. So COCOM was this American global agreement that classified encryption as a munition. So essentially, if you were producing encryption, you were considered essentially an arms dealer. So Ireland wasn't a signatory to COCOM, so we could make encryption as powerful as encryption could be. And yeah, it was. I don't think you get that too much anymore in security. I don't think there are. What do you mean you're building a better firewall? You better look under your car, pal. It doesn't. It doesn't really happen. But remember, then back then, security was also a lot easier because we didn't have this internet thingy. We didn't have email. We didn't have mobile devices. I mean, I remember, most of the hacking back then. So I was a wireman for a long time, and that's a polite term we had for a bugger. So most of the hacking back then was phone tapping. So that was the paranoia. So your biggest fear as an executive was someone listening into your phones. So I made a lot of my early money before I actually got my first computer security contract, either installing wiretaps legitimately for companies who were trying to find who's on the take on the inside, or sweeping their offices for bugs. So security was so much easier then, but it wasn't called the word crypto hadn't been invented. I think back then the word cyber hadn't been invented. Life was a lot easier, and we were pioneers because we knew something was coming because these computer things were happening, and people were talking about networks. You mean they could talk to each other? So we knew something was coming, and we saw people with the first phones walking around with these Motorola briefcase phones. We knew something was coming, so it was very exciting, but particularly challenging. It's not as much heartburn as there is today, that's for sure.
Well, and you talk about crypto. One of my favorite books that I read about crypto was, Applied Cryptography by, Bruce Schneier.
Right.
And Bruce said, back in, I don't know what year it was a long time ago, that complexity is the worst enemy of security. And so you
Hmm.
just keyed right in on that. Life was simpler then. It was easier to secure things because we didn't have so much damn stuff everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Access has done so much harm. We want access to everything all the time, but that's doors are two-way. Just as you can reach out, they can reach in. And it's never ending. And that's again part of the incredible stress and security. Well, this won't end, and we'll talk about that later. Some things do end, like stress. You can make it end. The job doesn't. The threats don't, but you can change the way you survive them personally.
Well, that's a great segue. So tell me about so when did you start the Cyber Resilience Project, and tell us about it. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So shit. So late last year, I'm only starting to tell the story. I found myself, and I hope my wife can hear me. Well, she's heard the story. Good. So I was sitting on the bed, crying my eyes out, cradling a 380. So done and done. It wasn't my first time, and I was absolutely certain that it would be my last time, and not in a good way. And so it was a culmination of 40 years of doing security, of 30 years of chronic stress, 50 years of mental illness. And a lot of the chronic stress was part self-imposed, like we do in this industry. Part of it was just the mental exhaustion of hiding my mental illnesses, hiding them from myself, being in denial about them, hiding them from friends and family, but hiding them from the industry because I thought if they find out how what I, that gee, he suffers from chronic depression, it's not such a big deal now, but for years, any mention of mental illness could have ended your career. So I found myself absolutely burnt out, just burnt out to the point of checking out. And so I had this kind of, come to Jesus moment with my wife, and I decided to quit security. And most people in security that I work with don't actually know that I really have quit security. Although in 2 hours I'm having a conversation with the CISO who wants me to build an employee security awareness course. Um, but it's like the mob. You're never really out. And so I was trying to, for me, and I think you're the same. Mission and passion are really important, and I'd lost that in security. I was floundering. It was Groundhog Day every day, and I said, I need something else. So mental health was the thing. So I'm now involved in a couple of major national mental health initiatives I can talk about later. But my transition to mental health was security. I thought, well, what can I do in mental health that's going to be good for me, but it's going to leave something behind for all my comrades, all the people that I've spoken to in security and opened up with. I can't just pull off this scab and walk away. So I thought PsyberResilience Project. So it started earlier this year as nothing more than a survey, a 20-question survey. Let's just ask people in the industry, is it true? Is it as bad as we think it is? Is it hurting in the way that it is? And lo and behold, as soon as I launched the survey, I think we got to a couple of hundred responses. COVID hit. And so I thought, well, I pulled the survey. I thought, well, everyone's stress is elevated now. We're not going to get good data. We're not going, and they're too busy to respond to surveys. So I kind of left it at that, and focused on other mental health initiatives that I was involved in. But it kept coming back. I'd get emails. So what's happened? What next? You've started this. You got to keep it going. And that's when I start talking to people like you and others and saying, well, we know it's an issue. Let's one of the greatest therapies is talk. Let's talk about this and see if we can create necessary change, figure out what that change has to be, and do so by getting more and more people to ask about it, to talk about it, to open up about it. So the project has evolved from a simple questionnaire to, I really don't know what it is anymore, except that we need to talk about it, and ultimately we need. So in my wildest dreams, my greatest fantasies, and obviously you're going to know now that I have really weird fantasies about CISOs especially, but I want mental resilience, cyber resilience, mental health to be as much a part of a security strategy as NIST. It needs to. Again, we talked about this before. You're paying for that 3 pounds of mush and fat and magic above the shoulders. Protect it, invest in it. If you don't, it will deplete. You'll lose money on in your investment. If you protect it and nurture it, you will get the best out of your people, and security will improve. So those are my fantasies. Sorry that I had to, put
No,
them out there. At least now you can edit those out if you.
no, I like those. The man, I'm in this. I've said it before, and some people get offended by it. And honestly, and you and I, prior to starting this show, we talked about the importance of being real, just being you. You know, uh, people introvert. I mean, it just means that people exhaust me, but it doesn't mean I don't love people. I really do
Yeah,
love people.
some of the
And
cruelty
I've
of it,
said
right?
before, and I said, what's that?
It's part of the cruelty of it. You love people, but you can't stand them.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of Chris Roberts. You and I have talked about him too. He's kind of the same way. I've called, BS on him a couple times. He's because he'll come off like he hates people. I'm like, man, if you hated people, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing.
Yeah,
You wouldn't be
it's just
helping people.
yeah, yeah, and it you know, yeah,
One, it's when I've said before, for me, where I'm grounded and grateful for it, and I understand that not everybody thinks the same way I do, that it's okay for people not to think the same way I do. But I've said before, and I say it again, and I mean it, that Jesus is the CEO of our business. And so what that means is that that's where I go for my answers, right? And when you're the CEO of a company, there's a lot of challenges that people don't really grasp. One, there's a saying, the wind blows the strongest at the top of the mountain. That just means that you're the one catching you're the one catching the wind. I mean, I think if you're a good leader, um, but without that, and another thing is like people. I got two more things, and ADHD, if you can't tell, is my thing.
oh yeah,
Uh, right? The you mentioned being as standard as NIST and um, because you're absolutely right. If I'm a business person and I'm paying for the mental horsepower of my team, and my team is broken mentally, uh, I'm not getting what I paid for. But also, there's a risk there. So one of the things that we do at Security Studios, we're trying to simplify information security as a risk management thing, right? Make it simple so that everybody can do it without losing its effectiveness. And after you and I talked last week or 2 weeks ago, um, I need to figure out, I want to figure out, I will figure out with help, what is the risk impact of, if you're And I was telling this with Pat Joyce, friend from he's the CISO at Medtronic. I said, let's say you have 50 people on your security team, and 10 of them are stressed out, burned out. 3 of them are dealing with um, depression, and 5 are, have significant ADHD. Would you want to know that? And would you factor that into the decisions you make? Would you factor that into, risk? Would you want to help? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And I said, well, that's where we need to go. We need to figure out, because the message is going to resonate. One of the things that just drives me crazy is the fact that people start off with the right motivation here, and then it sometimes these things die on the vine. We have Mental Health Hackers, which I think is a fantastic organization, but it's run on donation. They're always struggling for money. They're struggling to get into conferences. It's run as part-time, right? All these people have full-time jobs. Great. Is it going to die?
Yeah, it's and I still haven't figured out the why. I mean, I think if you're a security leader, if you're a CISO, and you're not taking the mental health of your team seriously and yourself seriously, I think you're a moron. I think you're an idiot. But that's part of the problem. I mean, and I'm going to piss off a lot of CISOs, but I, I I've met very few CISOs um, who are leaders. Most of the CISOs I've met, first of all, the majority of them, luckily it's changed. Some of the best CISOs I've met recently are women, and it's like a light bulb moment. Um, but the majority are still middle-aged conservative white men who do not like sentence like, "So how does that make you feel?" You know, the idea of connecting with the emotions or talking to grown men about their emotions, it's not something that they're particularly comfortable with. But most of them that I know of, because they've been in it that long, they didn't come in after the industry started. They migrated from IT. So they're essentially IT people who either the boss said we need someone to do security, you're up, or they thought, wow, I can get a 20% bump in salary, I'll do it. So they're not the kind of leaders that we expect them to be. They're which is unfortunate. But leadership to some extent can be taught. So I would love to see more CISOs recognize not only the harm of ignoring this for themselves and for the team, but the incredible value of addressing it. It's a no-brainer to me. I mean, it is a brainer because it's all in our heads, but it's a no-brainer to embrace mental health as a security strategy. I mean, if you just understand how the brain works, how the chemicals in the brain work, particularly cortisol. So if we're just looking at stress, leaving aside mental illness, but I mean they do connect, they do influence each other, but stress particularly, the killer is cortisol. That when cortisol remains high, it becomes toxic, and it eats. I mean, it quite literally eats your brain cells. So not only is it creating physical illness, it's hurting everything from your respiratory system to your immune system to your reproductive system. But its greatest impact is on your cognitive function. It's hurting your memory, your decision making, your attention, your focus. Aren't all those the things that you're paying your security team for? You're not paying them for how they look. You're paying them for their ability to make decisions, to spot trends, to spot anomalies, to react quickly, to remember stuff that you pay them a fortune to train in. And the stress that you're not addressing is killing all that. And that so if you're not going to do it for your team, do it for your organization, because that's creating holes in the fence. If your stress unchecked leads to burnout, burnout leads to checkout. People just stop caring. They show up, but that's it. It's pre, presenteeism. Um, so if they're not engaged, that creates more vulnerabilities for your organization. And we know our adversaries are noticing that. We're seeing chatter that if they keep wearing down security people, that's going to blow a hole in the fence. So, just from a security strategy, just from wanting to reduce your vulnerabilities is a good enough reason to address mental health, apart from the fact that it's a good, decent, honorable, ethical, human thing to do for your buddies.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And thank God we don't get paid for our looks. because,
tell
you
you,
know, I
and
don't know if any, but
that's why I wear a beard. I mean, so they don't see what I really look like. I mean, the first I shaved this off once, and my girlfriend ran away. That's for me the one upside of COVID is that I hide this when I'm out in public. So yeah,
yeah,
they are not paying us for our
I,
look, that's for sure.
well, I'd be broke for sure. Yeah, I'd be homeless. But you key on some really good points. That's another reason why I love talking to people like you, because you spur thought, right? There's nuggets of real wisdom in the things that you're saying. Well, you talk about leadership in our industry. Now, Pat Joyce, the person that I mentioned by name, is an amazing leader. I mean, incredible. He didn't grow up as a security person. He grew
Right.
up as a leader in the military and learned security stuff,
There you go.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would I would work for that guy any day. And so those are people that I like to, attach to, because one, you can use them.
Right.
It sounds weird, but for noble causes, right? If we can get Pat Joyce and open his doors to other CISOs, because they're all peers, right? He knows Jim O'Connor, the CISO at Cargill, and so on and so forth. And so let's get this group, let's not let this die on the vine. That is a real significant issue, and we can lead every other industry. I know other industries have their own stresses, they have their own things that
Sure.
they deal with. I can only imagine first responders. My son's a police officer in Kansas, and I drove down there in the summer, uh, specifically to ask him face to face, how you doing?
Right.
How's your head?
Yeah.
Are you getting help? And it was sad. Like, he's doing okay, and the police department has help, but nobody goes to see that help, because if you go to see that help, now it goes on your record. Now, if something bad happens on the street, that's going to be held against you. You're going to get cut down for a promotion. It's like that is the exact opposite we need to be doing with people that are self-aware enough to get the help they need to be healthy.
And it's a workplace injury. He's only that way, or they're only that way because of the incredible risks that they're taking for a pretty pitiful salary.
It's nuts. And I like the
Yeah,
way
I
you get me thinking too about how what message is going to resonate, right? Different messages resonate with different people. Thinking that there's one message, if I just nail this one thing, because the why hasn't this been addressed? Why isn't this being addressed on a more, it's being addressed here and there, but on a more like global, you know, everybody scale. It's not one message. There's got to be different messages for different people. For business leaders, what's the message? Well, you mentioned I'm not getting what I paid for. The security people might be, hey, you've got a bunch of vulnerabilities that you're not even accounting for, right? I mean, this is going to be fun figuring these things out.
yeah, and there are so many vulnerabilities. One is a staffing vulnerability. If you break, they quit. Who fills the spot? Who steps up to the line and takes the place? There is no one. And also, there's a good chance that the most burned out are the people who've been there long enough to be burned out, which means they're your most talented. So you can lose someone who's been in a SOC for 12 months because they decided this is too stressful. I don't like the shift or whatever. But when you've got team members who've been doing this for 20 years and then decide I'm done. I need to mind my mind. You're losing your most valuable people unnecessarily. And I think we have to, in order to get security leaders to really buy into it, and buying into it means um, all the time, for a long time, not just, let's do it, let's send them to a webinar and a seminar and we check a box and we move on. But I think they need to move beyond just the personal aspect of it, that these are humans, they're your friends, they're your family, you should be taking care of them, and make it a security imperative or risk management, because that allows them then to justify to their superiors why you guys are all, taking a half day off every Friday just to come together and to vent and to scream. And, What do you mean you want a budget for a crying room? Well, because it works. I think with CISOs too, I think we have to almost give them a kit. So we can, I think the biggest resistance, I've seen two resistance. One is it doesn't matter, it doesn't work. And I think that's just inhuman. It shouldn't be a boss or a CISO or have a job. And the other is we don't know how to do it. We don't know where to start. So maybe start there. Say, okay, well, just accept, take our word, or I'll say, we talked about this last time, or else we will unionize. But take our word for it that this has tremendous benefits. And there's 50 years of science that shows, that you can manage stress, you can tame the demons and the rage. But give them a kick, give them a system that they can just plug in and say, okay, here are 10 things that we can do to mind the minds of our security teams, and it's going to make everything better. And just rinse and repeat. And so many of them are so easy. I mentioned about the crying room. Um, there's a lot of good science that supports the idea of just giving people an opportunity to vent and to scream and to bitch and to moan is incredibly cathartic. It lowers cholesterol, it raises dopamine and endorphins and serotonin and oxytocin, all the good hormones. It makes you feel a lot better. Well, if it makes you feel better, do it often. So a lot of the solutions are incredibly simple. So there's no excuse, and they're free. You don't need to bring in a team of psychiatrists or therapists to mind your security team. A lot of it is just acknowledging to your security team, for example, that you recognize that what they're going through, and that you're going through the same thing. You have stress too. It comes from different places. It has different forms and shapes, but you're just as burnt out as they are. So it's I know you can sense the frustration. The solutions are very easy. What's absent is the leadership, the recognition that this is both a threat and an opportunity.
Yeah, and I think so. You're a leader. I'm a leader. Let's get more leaders, right? Let's do because first time we talked, it was it was just an introduction. Steve Marsden, made the introduction, and okay, you have the meeting, and it's like, wow, there's something here. I want to attach to this. I want to be a part of this. And then you get another meeting. It's like, okay, here's some things, ideas that are floating around in my head, your head, our head. And then it's like, okay, let's get a podcast. Let's talk about it. Let's just continue. Because you're right. It has to be consistency. This isn't about a flash in the pan. That doesn't lead to good habits. These are habits. In order to be habitual, in order to be healthy, you have to have good habits. And those take time. That's a lifestyle. And, there's still a ton of ideas, floating around, but I think we can lead every, sadly, I've lost two coworkers to suicide. I don't know if it was, I don't know if there were other mental health issues. All I know is they're not here anymore. They checked out.
Yeah.
The ultimate
Yeah.
checkout. But I cared deeply about both of them. I would have done just about anything for both of them had I known. And one of those was Robbie, who every talk I give, maybe 30, 40 talks a year. The first two slides are dedicated to this. They're dedicated to mental health.
Yeah.
We cite the first slide is, these are the statistics. These are the sad statistics. And the saddest statistic, I think, on that slide is 41%, only 41% of us people, not just security people, only 41% of us ever get help.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that means 59% of the people with mental health issues are trying to fight this by themselves.
And most of the 41% who get help don't get much help or enough help. It's
right.
help,
And
help's expensive.
Well, that was another thing that you and I talked about. We talked about, okay, if I have a mental health issue, which I do, I think most of us do at any given point in our life, and it's better. It ebbs and flows. Some days it's better, some days it's worse. But when I pick up the phone and I'm ready to hit that red button, I don't want to talk to HR. I don't want to talk to a therapist. I don't want to talk to a doctor. I want to talk to somebody like me who's been there, been through
Right.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. A comrade in arms, someone who gets it, someone who's lived it, not just someone from the outside who's clinically listening. Uh, but it brings up something that's very important. I was just thinking about it earlier. There are two sides to the solution. One is I call it cell, culture, environment, and leadership. So there's what your employer, your workplace is doing or should be doing, a culture of supporting mental wellness, of identifying those who are suffering, of removing stigma, of encouraging them, of making them know that it's safe to come forward, to put your hand up, to speak up. But the other is self-help. There are so many things that we can do to manage our own demons. And now, whether it's mental illness or stress, work-related stress, there are so many tools and techniques, and I've started trying them for myself. Um, I found I started doing mindfulness, for example. Now, so you can picture this. I died in the wool, card carrying Irish cynic who's told just to shut up, sit down, and breathe for 10 minutes, and it's going to change your life, right? And of course, I ADHD. I can't sit still for 10 seconds. So I mean, I almost had to tie myself down for 10 minutes, but I did it. I tried it, and I had the phone by my side with a timer on it. And I had the earphones on. I was listening to some music, and I kept looking at the phone. Shit, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Can I stop this? But I have to say, I stood up from that 10 minutes, and it was the most euphoric sense of calm and peace that I have ever discovered. And it got me hooked on mindfulness completely as a way to lower my stress, because my stress was killing me. I blood pressure, high blood pressure for 20 years. My cholesterol was so high, my doctor said my machine can't read it. You really ought to, do something about this. I was admitted to hospital because of a suspected heart attack. All this kind of stuff. So now that I got hooked on mindfulness, I'm saying, holy shit, this stuff really works. What else works? What else have I been missing that doesn't involve? And I also found out just about 2 months of meditation ended 20 years of medication. I was able to bring my blood pressure down to such a level that I no longer needed that medication. It really was a fantastic feeling. There was a great mental health feeling and great for my mental health because it told me this stuff actually works. It is in my head, but it's not in my head, but it is in my head. So now I'm exploring things like positive psychology and emotional resilience and sky breath meditation. Have you tried sky breath meditation?
No,
I'm still looking
sounds
into
good
it,
though.
but it does. So Yale, I think it was Yale did a study recently where they put a bunch of veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan through sky breath meditation. It took them about a week to learn it. It's a little bit, it's breathing. It's nothing more than breathing. And it's amazing how breathing manages your emotions and your chemicals, this brain alchemy. But they saw their anxiety levels reduced to normal within a week and remain that way for a year. Um, so there are incredible tools out there that I'm only beginning to learn and was incredibly cynical about it. My wife does yoga, and I just look and said, "There's no way I'm putting my body through that. My body can't get to that. You know, I can't do downward dog. I can do sleeping cow. You know,
Yeah.
that's the best that I can do. But there are so many things that we can do to help ourselves to manage stress. And one of the most powerful tools in security is stop giving a shit. I think we have too many self-imposed, unrealistic expectations and fears. We have to accept the theory, of acceptable losses. We are going to lose sometimes, but we're managing risk. We're not putting out all the fires. We're just stopping them burning down a neighborhood. So I think we have to push it from both ends. We have to persuade our leaders to lead on this, but we have to take care of ourselves too, and that means learning. Taking care doesn't mean I'm going to eat better and drink less, because I like, eating badly and drinking more. But there are lots of ways that we can mind our minds that are incredibly powerful. We just need to be more inquisitive and less cynical about
I love it. I love it, man. It makes a lot of sense because I don't think any time in our we touch, there's so many themes here, but they're all connected. The theme of, you and I don't know, I can't remember if we had started recording this podcast yet or not, but we were talking about the complexity of life and how it was simpler. Actually, I think it was in the podcast. Um, there's so many distractions nowadays. There's so many things. We're getting bombarded by information all over the place, and not just information, but also disinformation. So
it.
if
Right.
you're confused, welcome to the party. We're all confused. This is 2020. Uh, but the fact that are, I think it's really important to be intentional. So it's not just going to magically happen. You're not just going to magically put those headphones on and magically find yourself where you were with the mindfulness. You have to do it. You have to,
Yeah.
and there are people who care, people who are resources. I'm going to follow up with you, after this and try to get a list of resources that we can provide to people. Um, and it makes a huge difference because your mind controls, you mentioned how your mind, the health of your mind can control your blood pressure, control your uh, everything, right? It's the central part of your entire being is your mind.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the studies that, I mean, again, we're going back 50 years, the incredible connection between the chemicals in your brain and everything that you are and do and feel. So whatever, as your chemicals go out of imbalance, and for most of us they do, we're less happy, we're more stressed. So we've got less dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin, we've got more cortisol, and that flows down through your body. I mean, you ever wonder why you get fat when or you put on weight when you're stressed? It's not just because you're eating more, it's because cortisol creates glucose. Glucose sits on the waist. And that they're all connected. And the more we realize about not just how they're connected, but how we can control them. And again, now, just this is not some fringy new agey crap. I've been through that moment of this is just silly, this is just ridiculous, this is not science. But when you try it, and suddenly it works, and that's to me is the addictive part of it. If you know, like you ADHD, if it doesn't work now, I'm gone. I want instant proof. I want a absolute instant proof of concept, or I don't believe it. I got instant proof. I'm hooked, and I keep doing it, and it's not. I don't have to tie myself down anymore. But the more we learn about how our self-imposed stress um, uh, guides us, guides everything that we do, good and bad, and that we are so much in charge of that. It changes your perspective completely. I'm lucky I was able to quit security after 50 or 40 years, even if I've not fully quit. Like I said, the mob keeps dragging me back. But you can quit a lot of what bugs you. And one thing that I found, and I've started to teach, is recognizing the difference between stress and stressors. I mentioned this before. There's no stress in security, absolutely zero. There are 1,000 stressors. How you process them, how you deal with them, how you let them eat you or not, is entirely up to you. And that's one thing about mindfulness. It's not meditation. It's not saying I'm shutting everything out. It's saying I'm letting everything come in, and I'm just saying I don't care. It's all right. I don't care. I don't care about the long hours. I'm dealing with it. I just you stop the stressors eating at you, and it's an incredibly powerful way to view your world. So you don't have to leave security to deal with the stress. You can let it bounce off you and still get that enjoyment and fulfillment and enjoy that passion, and don't have to throw away something that you've invested 20 years of your life in. There are no absolutes. You can be in security, you can be in a stressful environment and not be stressed.
Right. And when you talk about science, I mean, it is legitimate science. It's observational science, right? There's observational science, there's historical science. Observational science is do this and observe the outcome, observe what
Right.
happened. And so it is scientific. It may seem weird and new agey to you, A lot of things do when you've never tried them, when they're foreign, right? But you
Well,
need
I
to
mean,
just do it.
the military is now using mindfulness as part of its routine pre and post deployment. Prisons are now using mindfulness, teaching prisoners to use mindfulness to deal with the chaos of prison life. Schools are now using it to reduce bullying because a lot of bullying comes from internal stress and then you externalize it. So, yeah, the weight of science over there's over 1,000 studies just on mindfulness. And then there are lots of different types of mindfulness and different types of meditation. So there is something for everyone. But when you see, places as tough and cynical as military and prisons use it, you know there's something there worth exploring.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, two things before we, wrap up. Because seriously, we could spend all day talking to you because I learn a lot, and it connects dots. I'm a dot connector too. So if there's this random thought over here and this random thought over here and this thing over here and I see this over there, I'm always looking for relationships. So that's why COVID has driven me absolutely freaking batty because God, I don't even want to get started. The so Cyber Resilience Project for listeners, it's PSYBER Resilience, RESILIENCE, all one word, project. And we
Right.
can find you online at the PSYBER project.com.
There you
Right?
go.
Is that
I wasn't going
okay?
to use the entire name in the URL because no one would ever find the site. You know,
Right.
spelling is bad enough for most of it. So yeah, the cyberproject.com. And there isn't a huge amount there now. I need to start filling it up with and linking it to other resources. But I think if we took a conversation like this and magnified it to include 100 people and start actually drilling down to these self-help tools. I mean, a cybersecurity mindfulness class, just teaching people how pick one tool that we know has proven efficacy in reducing stress. Just focus on one thing, small battles, small wins. There's a simple and very practical outcome from this more holistic conversation. I would love to get CISOs, sitting and issuing the word yum, finding, going down hunting for their chakras. Maybe it might be a little bit extreme, but, you talked about mental health hackers. I mean, they should do such a fantastic job, but they're working full time. They can only devote a certain amount of time and resources to this, and they're very thinly funded. So I would love, while we'll be having the bigger conversation and more voices and louder voices to a point that there's action. In the meantime, how do we help those who are struggling? And we have to separate mental illness from stress. Mental illness is tricky. We have to acknowledge, I mean, so full disclosure, and I was only, I mean, I've had this since I was a kid, but severe social anxiety with avoidant personality. That's one of my demons. ADHD, another one of my demons, and chronic depression, very common amongst the Irish. So on their own, they can be pretty devastating. When they get together, like I spoke about earlier, it's like just a non-stop frat party. It just ends up being tiresome. Um, but we need more people, and I've worked in the intelligence community. I've advised. I've been a security advisor and congressional committee. I've advised the Irish government, the British government, the Bulgarian government. I mean, it hasn't stopped me in my career, and I think it might, if I decided to stay in security, it might actually help me. But we need our comrades, our fellow security professionals to feel comfortable at saying, "I am this or I have this. Now, how can you help me?" So I think hands up, skirts up. Show us what you got. I think that's a great starting point. I think if
Yeah.
we can just get more people to say, "I'm dealing with this too, and I'm no longer ashamed to say it," and it takes incredible courage. It sounds crazy, but it it took me incredible courage to sit down and breathe for 10 minutes, you know, because I
Yeah.
was so
Yeah.
cynical about it and so nervous about anyone finding out that I'm doing this meditation stuff. Um, but yeah, let's see if we can divide and conquer. Find some things that we really can address now. I think it's two things. People were struggling with mental illness. If you want to come out and you want to support, we absolutely have to support them and let them know that we will support them and it won't die in the vine. And we are here in a year or 2 years, whenever they're spiraling down, when they're in a trough, they're having a depressive moment, they have suicidal idea, whatever it is, we are there and they know who we are, so they can call us. It's not just you or I, but there might be 100 people they can call, and then focus on stress. I think stress management makes the job, the mission, a lot easier to deal with, and take some of the pressure off the mental illness if you're dealing with that, and particularly PTSD. With so many military and law enforcement coming into security, they're coming in broken already, and they think that coming from the streets is going to ease the stress, and they found that it really hasn't. It's just morphed into a different type of stress. So we have a few things I think to do here.
Yeah. Well, and that's, and I, you know, it's like relationships too. So many relationships we have in our industry are transactional, where it's, you have a relationship, you do something, and then you both go your separate ways, and
Right.
you may never talk. I think, and I'm saying this too, for us, because I do want to stay. I don't want that to happen here with you in the Cyber Resilience Project and me and Secure Studio, because if we're going to make a difference, we have to stay committed to making a difference. We need to
Absolutely.
continue to push to overcome obstacles. There's going to be plenty of resistance along the way. We're going to need encouragement. We're going to need focus, just to continue to push and push through. People's lives actually do depend on.
Yes, mental illness is
That's the
like
truth.
mental illness is like a puppy. It's not just for Christmas; it's for life. And and
I love
and
that.
and and this is something that I'm very conscious of. You can't, this is you can't. It's not a flashbang. You can't just toss it in and walk away. Um, if you and I are raising this issue and others are raising these issues, and we engage, and even one person in this audience today says, "You got me, you got me. You've said so many things that resonate. I'm ready to confront these demons. I'm ready to deal with it. I'm ready to try something." We can't walk away now. We've uncorked this, so now we have to be there. And when I retire from this, someone else has got to be there. It's almost like we have to train a core of head cases, you know, um, to because more people are coming into the industry not realizing that it could kill you.
Right.
If not literally, figuratively, it will hurt you. It will change your mind. So we have to. Maybe our next conversation is how do we keep air in this balloon? How do we do that? How do we reach out and help individuals? How do we give them tools so that while the bigger war is going on, we can help them fight an individual demon battle?
Let's do that. So, are are you open next Tuesday morning for episode 103? Us to pick this up, or should we
I,
push you
I,
out
I,
to another?
let me check, but probably, and I can be back to you in an hour and let you know. But I can certainly do this weekly. There's you know, almost like a Dr. Phil for our community. But none of it. Well, like Dr. Phil, we're not real doctors either. Um,
Right.
but
But no, but doctors heal people. You know what I mean? There's the accredited doctors, and there's us. We sort of are doctors because we're helping people in our industry. A doctor can't do this. A psychiatrist can't do this. You have to be one of us. You have to resonate with us. You have
I
to
think so.
understand what goes on in the mind of us to help us. It's got to be us.
It's again going back. I'm a really scientific guy. I like proof. I like evidence, and something that's been done over the long term. But talk therapy is central to mental wellness, but it all depends on who's in the conversation. And I think you and I could, if we talked like this for days, we could probably rewire a lot of our own thinking because we could learn from each other. So we need just to magnify that. I agree. I'm not trying to put therapists out of business, but right now in this industry, at this time, under these circumstances, it really is people like us sharing what we've learned and encouraging to others to share and to learn. So just more of this could be one of the greatest therapies that we've stumbled across.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right. Well, you're going to check on, next
Tuesday.
week because it would be because, and I'm going to go back to the recording and I'm actually going to pull out the thing that you said for the next steps, keeping air on the boat, getting
Right,
resources.
right.
And so we'll come prepared next week with, hey, here's some things. It'll be awesome. I think a lot of our listeners, this will be, they've never heard of the Cyber Resilience Project. Well, boom, now you
Right.
have.
Yeah.
Now it's a resource that you can go uh, and I take the survey. I took the survey myself. I thought it was really good. Wasn't painful. You
Right.
didn't have
Yeah.
I didn't have to bring up any childhood drama or
No blood
trauma.
drawn. Yeah.
Nope, I kept my DNA, so that's good. All
Yeah. And
right,
it
so we'll try to.
and I just want to say one thing about the survey too that I found, and just from the feedback is um, giving people an opportunity to ask and answer those tough questions can be pretty cathartic. I've had a lot of comments from that survey saying no one has ever asked me that, which means I've never had a chance to say that. And the fact that it's anonymous gave me even more courage to say it. But now so anyway, yeah, I mean, the study on its own, simply asking the questions, has triggered things in a lot of people who never thought they were allowed to be asked those, and that anyone actually cared to ask. So maybe that's something
Awesome.
that we need to. It's the crying room, it's the screaming room, it's the padded room. So yeah, I'm willing to keep doing this. Absolutely.
Awesome. And again, for listeners, it's THE, so the cyber, PSYBER project.com. Go check it out. Go get, go take the survey.
Okay.
Do
Thank you.
whatever, you need. So um, we're not going to do news because we're running up against time, which is awesome because news is just kind of a filler anyway. So it's
Yeah.
awesome that we were able to chew that up. Um, this is episode 102 and we're just about complete. Thanks, Neal. Awesome discussion, man. I just so much good thought things, and you're a good person, which is nice because if I'm getting this kind of information from somebody that I sense that I can't trust, well, that can be dangerous too. So uh, I just appreciate you.
Yeah, it goes back to
uh,
our conversation about misinformation. You have to trust the source, and I'm trusting the sources that I'm getting it from, and so I'm hoping others can trust it too. And I'm living it. I'm at the tail end of my career, so I don't think there's much I haven't seen. But yeah, we have to be true. We have to be honest, and people will see through bullshit too. Let's
I
let's
hope so.
end let's end this podcast on the word bullshit. I think that's always a good way to end
Well, let's get through this part first and then we'll do that. So
it.
we're grateful for our listeners. We always have to say that because we truly are. It's cool to have them give email and things like that. If you need to send us email, it's unsecurity at protonmail.com. If you're the social type who doesn't like the longhand email and you like to limit yourself to 140 characters or less, Twitter, I'm at Evan Francine. Brad's at Brad Nye. Neal, do you have a preference or a preferred way for people to reach out to you?
Gee, I have 1,000 email addresses. Which is the prettiest? Um, Neal at the cyberproject.com. Let's try that.
Perfect. Perfect. And lastly, Security Studio, it's at Studio Security, and FRSecure is at FRSecure for more things about what we do. That's it. And as Neal, you'll end it with the last word of wisdom. What is it?
Oh,
Bullshit.
you are in charge of your mind more than you think, and we're going to teach you how.
Okay, but you were supposed to end with the word bullshit.
Well, you just did.
Oh, okay. Well, bullshit then.
Thank you. See?
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Evan. Good talking to you. I appreciate you shining a light on this.